Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Nedarim daf Samaches. We are going to begin on the very top of Samaches Mit Aleph. So we were learning at the beginning of our new parak that when it comes to a woman who is a naira, or as the Ran says, even at the age of 11, who had erisin, so at that time the father and the husband both together need to be made from the neder. If they don't both do it, then the hafar doesn't work. And the chiddush is not that either one could do it, and their hafara by themselves works, but rather both of them need to do the hafara when they're at this stage. So we saw in yesterday's daf one pasuk as to how we know this, and now we have Debei Rabbi Shmuel Tani learns a pasuk. It says Ben Ish LeIshtoi Ben Av LeVitoi. So this pasuk mentions about the ish, it mentions about the husband, and also mentions the father. So So we learn from this pasuk that they both are made for the nedarim. So the question is, we already learned it out, this drasha from this other pasuk. So what does he do with this? So he learns, or it says the Rabbi, he learns it out to teach the other din of Rabbi. What is that? So let's look in the Ran. The Ran says, come on. Like, how am I supposed to know this? It's something that we didn't see yet. It's something we're going to see later on Daf Ayin. Makish kaid me havoya shniel kaid me havoya rishayna. Basically, if the chassan dies, all of the rights get placed onto the father. It goes back to the father. That's what it means. Kaid me havoya shniel kaid me havoya rishayna. So that all goes back to the original father. So that's the drashas. I guess we'll see in a couple of days on Daf Ayin. Okay. For Rava, so according to Rava, hi the Tani de Rabbi Shmuel Ma'yevadle. How does he learn out this drasha of this, or how does he know, or what does he do with this pasuk rather? Ben Ishla Ishtai. So Meboyli Loimer Shabal Mefer Nedarim Sheben Leveina. This comes to tell you that the husband has the right to be made for matters which are between him and her. Says the Ran, the Nidre Inoi, matters which is Inoi Nefesh, and this is going to be TB 13, El Nedarim Bal Mefer Leishto. So this is referring to things which are between him and her, which should cause Inoi Nefesh. So Nidre Inoi Nefesh, says the Ran Behedik Sivi. It says it explicitly. Kol Neder v'chol Shulas Isul Anos Nefesh Bein Ish Leishto. So we already know that. So therefore we need it for Devarim Leveino Levina. So certainly the husband is allowed to remove anything which is Inoi Nefesh, but this pasuk is talking about Beino Levina. As the Gemara explains later on, what that is. So the Ran poses, well, how does the Tana Rabbi Shmuel, without this pasuk, because he already uses this pasuk to tell us that the father and the husband are made from the Nedarim when she is a Nara Marasa. So if that's the case, then how do they learn this drasha that the husband has the right to be able to be made from the Nedarim, which are Veinal Veina? Look at this Rashi. Kigoin shlo shamish mitasai shlo achol shlo eskashet. So matters which are Veinal Veina are things which have to do with having tashmish with her husband, or not wearing makeup, or not looking, beautifying herself, etc. So that is what this is referring to. So, and it says, Be'el Devarim Av Mefer Levitoi. So, TB 13, when it comes to the man, and I wrote this correctly, a Baal can be made for Nidri Inui Nefesh, and also Devarim Leveino Leveina. But who did Av Levitoi? The truth is, the father also has the same rights to be able to remove these things, which are Inui Nefesh or Devarim Leveino Leveina. According to the Das Harambam, the father can be made for Kol Nidri Bitoi, all matters. So the husband can only do Inui Nefesh and Devarim Leveino Leveina. And there's a machlokus whether or not that's also by the father, or the father has more rights to be able to be made for even beyond even beyond that. Okay. Fine. So question 10. Bein ish l'ishto bein avlo vitai. So this pasuk, Elu hilchos nedarim yolav tanid Rabbi Shuma mahaikra. So one is the namarasa, the father and the husband are made for the nedarim, and the husband is made for nedarim leveino devarim leveino leveino. Okay. Weiter. So now this question that we're going to see really is going to carry us throughout the rest of this daf. The Gemara asks a question. Now we said that we need both the husband and the father to both be made from the neder, or else it doesn't work. So the question is, if let's say only one of them is made for, the other one isn't, so Baal Megas Gayas, do we say that the husband is almost like shearing? Or Makush Kolish? Or is it that it's weak? In other words, Megas Gayas means part is completely sheared off. In other words, you have in order to be able to remove this neder, you need to have both of these people. So if one person does it, does that remove half completely? Or does the hafara of this person, not that he removed 50% of it, but he actually removed he weakened the entire neder she made. It weakens basically the whole thing. So that's the question. So is it megas gayas or makosh kolish? So so where would we find this practical nafkamina? Kigain the nadra matrain zaysim. Let's say she made a neder regarding two zaysim, two olives. The shama oros, the husband heard this. The heferla. So not only does he have to be made for, but so does the father. So he was made for this neder, which means maybe half of it is removed. And then she ate both olives. If you want to tell me that part of it is completely removed, so lakia. So then there's malchus because there's still that other zayas that is intact, and therefore she's chayav for eating zayas. Yamrin and mikosh kolish is serbe almahu mai. So if it's mikosh kolish, so each of these olives were like shaved off a little bit, if you will, and therefore it would not be the shear. Let's look in Rashi first. When it says megas goy is the neder cut. Mashu mefer, when this person, the husband, annuls this neder, kaitzetz hachatzi shel neder, is he like cutting off half of it? The oikru legamri, v'chelk acher kedekoi koi, but the other half is not untouched. Adi asi abba mefer oisachelik. So he removes 50% and he removes 50%. So the fact that he removed 50%, the other half is totally untarnished, if you will. O mikosh kolish, da faraso pashta bekuli neder. When he made hafara, it affects the whole thing, but only part of it. Bekolish lo b'ma'at v'neder kal mamashahaya ad achshav. So it's like a weaker neder than it was before. And we gave this example, and let's look at the words of the Ran. So the Ran says, Leka Malchus, so Iyamrit Mikosh Kolish, so there's not going to be Malchus, the HaKolish Le Kuli Nidra. Leka Eli Surba Alma. So Umakshu Hacha. Lamoli train Zaysin de Nakat. Why is that to mention this is a case where there's two Zaysim? As we find them set to Shua, somewhere Papa the B'choyel Shehu B'kanamais like it. Anytime we're dealing with a kanamais, there's a din malchus. So what's the whole problem over here? This is a din of kanamos, there's to be a din malchus. So Yeshomim Yishem Te'ika Hasam Man Desfirle, there are those that hold they feel but kanamos lolaki. Even when it comes to kanamos, you don't get malchus, adik kzayas. That there actually has to be a shear. Nakad lahacha hachi laravcha demilsa. So we mention it because, again, there are shitas that require it. Inami mishum shvua nakadla. Because of a shvua, that's why it was mentioned. Skipping a few words, it was shvua b'pachas mekashir leika malchus. When it comes to a shvua, unlike a neder, it has to be the proper shear. If it's not the right shear, you don't get malchus. That's answer number 2. Inami deloika de ksava de kaimer hacha loika b'karbon kaimer. It means that you have to pay. It doesn't mean you're going to get malchus. This means you get a carbon. So it's not really talking about getting malchus. even though it says loike, it means you're going to be plagued, you're going to be hit with a major monetary loss of having to bring a carbon. Question 11. So we boil who bal get megas goyes or mikosh kolish madua nak migamar hanafki mida nidur al shtei zaysim. Why does it mention that? V'lo b'zayis kazayis echad. There's really three answers instead of two. Either because there's a man that says the lake of Malchus bepachas mikazayis, or we're talking about Shvua the lake of Malchus pachas mikazayis, or a third answer, which for some reason it doesn't say here, right? There's really three answers. I'm going to write here. There's really three answers that when it says like, it's really referring to Malchus. Okay. So that's the Gemara's question. Tashima. So the Gemara answers like this: Amosai Amru. When do we say this din? So on this, we have to kind of have a better sense of what exactly is this referring to. So this is referring to where one of these two people die, either the father or the husband, those two people who had the ability to be made for the neder. So, Amosai Amru Mesa Baal, when do we say that if the husband dies, Nisraik Nurshos Av, that all the rights go back to the father completely, because now the husband is no longer in the picture, so she goes back to the father? That's only Bizman Shulishama Habal, Kaidim Shiamos. That's only if the Baal never heard the neder before. So if he never heard the neder, then he died, so then it all goes back to the father, then all the strength goes to the father, and that's it. But that's only because the Baal never heard the neder, that she made a neder. Oh, Shishama, maybe he did hear it, but Shasak. We'll see the Ran. He heard it, but he was silent. Oh, Shishama v'hefer, or he did hear it, and he did hafara, and he died on that day. So let's look in the Ran. It says, Haditani umeis bo bayom ashama v'shasakoi. And so when he died on that day, it's referring to when he was silent. The davka bo bayom, the katil ukaimi baal, the husband, the baal was not mekayim it, so yachol av l'hafer. So on that same day, the father can be made for it. Let's say he dies the next day, lo. So he had that one day to do hafara, and the fact that he didn't, it shows that he liked it. So zuhi shashninu, this is what we've learned, as we'll see later on. Mesa Baal, in the event that the husband dies, as we said, that the rights go back to the father. Go back to the father as we continue the Samach Chesed Beis. Im Shama, but let's say the husband did hear the kiyim and he sustained that neder. O Sheshama Shasak. Let's say he heard that neder and he was silent. Umeis b'yom shel charav. He died on the next day, so his shtika is a form of hakama. Ein yachal hafer. No longer can the father do hafara. Okay. So we look in, let's continue. Shama avia behefer law. Let's say the father heard the neder and he annulled it. V'lohispik baal shmaya ad shmeis ha'av. And the baal didn't have a chance to hear, even though the father did, he was made for it. Now the husband didn't have a chance to do anything ad shmeis ha'av, and the father died. So in this situation, the husband cannot make a hafara now. He doesn't have the ability to do the hafara anymore, even though the father made a hafara, but since the father died, so then now he doesn't have a chance to do the hafara either. So if you look in the Ran, it says on the side, V'hispik habal l'rebusa nakte. So this is a chiddush, that the husband didn't have chance to do anything. Diafagavdol near Nedarim halol orus, even though it never appeared to this man. Lo zachbehen. So what would we say? Can I read? Come on, ema hanimil min Nedarim shul niru orus. The alma kol shul niru lo yihor koichay behen. Its strength was weakened. The Sachadat Ramina says the Randi Kivanda av Mefer. You would think the father did annul it. Vabal lo zacha klal, and the husband's not zeichet anything, kimeis when the father dies, iklish le hai nidra tuva. It gets extremely weak. Vo mishtayir be el porta. There's only a small amount left. You would think that the husband now has the right to be able to remove it, because we know that the husband, we know that the father had already done hafara, so therefore that weakens the neder. So you would think that that this man, the husband, has a right to remove the rest of it. Kamash 1. Even though this neders became weakened, nonetheless the small amount that's remaining, we do not allow him to be mefer. Even if the neder was not weakened at all, the hainu shama habal, which means the husband heard about it, the shasik, he was quiet, they feel achi av matzi mefer, the father could be mefer if the husband died. Hachinami ashminan de afal gav de iklish leituva balu matzi mefer. So, but on the other hand, if the father dies, the husband doesn't have the right to be mefer. So it's interesting when it comes to the husband that dies, it reverts back to the father. But the father dies, that does not help the husband, even though the father already made the neder. He made the hafara. Still, it doesn't matter. So let's see this again. Shama Avia, the father heard about it. Vaheferlon, he was mefer. The father died. That even so, even though it's very, very weak, this neder, because the father had annulled it, nonetheless, even though it was weak, the husband could no longer do the hafara because the father is not alive. And then this is the important line. Shama bala. Let's say the husband heard the neder. Veheferlon. The husband was made for the neder. The father didn't have a chance to do anything until the husband who was made for it dies. The chiddush is, in this situation, we say that the father does have the right to be mefer. Shama Baal of Heferla. Let's say the husband heard it, and he was mefer. And he didn't have a chance. The father didn't have a chance to be mefer until the father himself died. And a Baal Yachol Hafer. In that situation, again, the husband cannot be mefer. Shein Baal mefer el b'shutvus. So we see, interestingly enough, that again there's more koyach when it comes to the father than the Baal. That in a situation where the father dies, even if the father was mefer, the husband cannot be mefer afterwards. Mashen kain, if the Baal dies, then it reverts back to the father. We look in the middle of this Ran, it says, Dinihi, let's actually, before you see that, the Ran of Divrei Maschil of Shema Bala. So it says, Ha Shmi'in and ratio of Rusa. The ratio is a chiddush. The Bizman Sheshama Habal. As long as if the husband heard about him, a shasek, he was silent, Afgadul Iklish Le Nidra, even though he didn't weaken it, because he wasn't made for it, Nisrekner Shusl Av. Nonetheless, if this husband dies, it goes to the father. The Kavachimer Hashtahecha de Nadra Kati Kedekoi Koi. So we can say Kavachimer now in a situation where the neder remains, Ab Matzi Mefer, it's still the father when the husband dies can be Mefer. Hecha de Akushle Ki Hacha the Baal Mefer. Fine. So as the Baal was Mefer here, it's weakened. So Kavachimer, the father should get the right. Skipping 10 lines. Granted, at the time in which the husband was mefer, Havi hafaraso hafara malya, it's strong enough, like shuye nidra, to weaken it, tuva, quite a bit. When the husband dies, batal lagamri, we say that this hafara of the husband is completely removed. That's why the father is able to be zeichet to do this. Mashenkin b'baba the basraisa kivan de kati isel av u'bata hafaraso v'kivan de nadra mikosh kolish l'beis hillel l'matzi zach b'chelka shabal. So since he was Mayfair. So since it became so weakened, you would maybe think it is so insignificant. You would think that in this third category that the father wouldn't be Yarishit when the Baal dies. It's maybe not even worthy of Nisraikin. So perhaps that's the Chiddush. Look in question 12. Shama Bala, you hear the husband. The husband hears about the neder, and he's made for it. And then the father doesn't have enough time, and then one more time. Shama Bala, this is question 12. The husband hears about the neder, and the husband is made for it. The father doesn't have a chance to do anything before the husband died. So Zui Shishninu Nisraikna. So he said in this case, it goes back to the father. Madulo Pligi Halcha Beis Hillel. Why does the Beis Hillel disagree? Shein Yachol Hafer. That the father shouldn't be able to do anything, Mishum de Kolish, because the husband weakened it, Beinu Chashav Harishai. So the answer, question 12. Kivan Shemeis, once the husband dies, Batal Hafarasol Gamri. Even though he did Hafara, it's like it didn't exist. B'shuv Chazil Av L'Mazakime. And that's the reason why the father is Zaycha. Ma'ashein Kain Begavna de Pligi, where Beis Hillel disagrees, the Isla Av Shehafer V'Kolish Haneder. Okay. So let's continue. Shama Balwa, back in the Gemara, Shama Balwa, second to last line, that the husband hears about it, the Hafer law, V'hispika Av L'Shmoy Ad Shemes, and the father dies. And Abal Yachol Hafresh and Abal Mefer El B'Shutfus. Okay. As we continue to Samach Tes Amud Aleph, what happens if Shama Aviyah? The father hears the neder, the Hafer law, and the father removes the neder. He doesn't have the ability to do it completely. For his Kabal Shmoya, the husband doesn't have enough time Ad Shemes until he dies. Chayzer Av, the husband dies. Chayzer Av Mefer Chelko Shalbal. So the father can come and stand up in his stead. Rav Nasan, Hein Hein Divrei Beis Shammai. These are the words of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Omrim Ein Yachol Hafer. And Beis Hillel says you cannot be Hafer. And Shemamina LeBeis Shammai Megas Gayas Beis Hillel Mikash Kol Shemamina. So we see that this whole question that we had before is a Machlokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai holds Megas Gayas, that half of it is completely removed. The Beis Hillel says that no, it's the entirety of the neder, some of it is weakened. Which is why Beis Hillel says in Yachol Hafer, because the entirety of the neder is still there, just was weakened. Beis Shammai says Migas Goyes, and therefore because of that, he holds half of it's already been removed. So let's look in the Ran. Beis Hillel Oimrim in Yachol Hafer Klal. The father doesn't have a right to be mefer. The reason why the father could do it is because we say migas goyas, that half of it was removed. Kishehefer av tchila, when the father was mefer originally, hefer chelko bavad, he was only mefer his half. V'chel kabal will nigra klal. That of the husband, nothing happened at all. Dayan hu kayim legamri, it remains. The choshev hu laharishul av. It's significant enough for the father to be yorish, because that schus is entirely intact, and therefore that's why Beis Shammai says migas goyes, and therefore the other half is something which is intact to entirely go to the father. Beis Hillel mikosh kosh, the whole thing is weakened. Keshehefer av chelko nigra chelko shalbal, it weakens it. Ve'enu choshev l'harishol av. Kivan da av akati isa hafar didei lo ba'ulo. Ve'kati nidra bekilishusa. It's still weak. Ve'kivan da kolish le'chelko shalbal lo matzimefer av. So basically the answer is, it's a machlokas between Beis Shammai and the opinion of Beis Hillel. Okay. Let's look at question TB14. A lot of questions here on such a small daf. TB14. So it says as follows. Ma nafkemi the menidoin im bal o av migas goyes o mikosh kosh. That's what I wrote. If she made a neder on 2 zaysim, and one person was mefer and not the other, the av or the baal, if you're chayiv malchus, if you hold migas goyes, then you're chayiv. Now, by nisrak naha'av, by being given over to the father, if the hafara took place, then he died. Do we say the father could be mefer in the neder? So if you say migas goyes, yes. Okay, let's see if that's, because there's 2 answers. That's what they're looking for. Let's look at 14. So benidu b'shnei zeisim v'achal shnehem achar hafara da'av o baal imegas like v'imiklesh lo tilka b'shama av v'hefer habal b'shama ha'av v'hefer u'bal meis kodim sheshama imegas amrina nisreik l'chel kabal v'imiklesh enu chashiv l'harishay. Okay, so it's that's the basic idea behind this, and let's see question TA 14. Nedarim mishnei zeisim v'shama oros v'hefer v'chaltam ha'im loika umazet toli. So again, it's machlokas whether it's Beishamis Hillel, if mikosh kolish and you don't get malchus, or migas goyes v'loik ad kan.